Looking back, what would Ronald Reagan, Nixon, any of these men, who would you say was probably the most patriotic, best guy? And then what do you think they would think of what's happening now?
If Ronald Reagan were alive today, he'd be rolling in his grave. First of all, I think he knew that George H.W. Bush was the single largest mistake he ever made.
Well, he said he's a globalist trilateralist and didn't want him.
And what was his reward for picking Bush? They tried to kill him. And as I established in my book, the many, many ties between the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan and the Bush family. That's
got to scare them that you're such an insider saying all this.
Let's say two things. First of all, Hinckley is not the only gunman. Secondarily, there's more than 5 shots. Thirdly, they've never turned over the photographs that were taken of the crime scene. I went and obtained the actual photographs, the uncropped photographs from presidential photographer Michael Evans. Look at the big picture. You can see the second gunman. You can see him on the balcony up above the door. You can see the gun in his hand. The 5 shots...
And that's in your book. It's so amazing.
The 5 shots that Hinckley squeezed off at Reagan are all accounted for. None of them hit Ronald Reagan. Now,
and then, of course, Hinckley's family's meeting the day before with the Bushes in Colorado.
John Hinckley Sr., John Hinckley Jr.'s father, is not only a former CIA operative along with George W. Bush, but he's a major financier of Bush's political career. In 1964, 1966, 1970, 1980, he's described in the papers, in the newspapers, as a Reagan supporter. Never gave a dime to Ronald Reagan. It's disinformation.
You knew Ronald Reagan very well, and also Nixon. I guess you were closer to Nixon, though, right?
Nixon had a voracious interest in politics.
I mean, after he was out of office, he hung out with you.
We were very close friends. He made a mean martini, I must tell you. The great thing about Nixon was he was not retrospective or introspective. But after he had a drink and a half, you could get him to talk about Alger Hiss, Dwight Eisenhower, Joe McCarthy. Believe me, he knows who killed John Kennedy. He's well aware that Lyndon Johnson killed John Kennedy. What was it that Nixon said to me? Lyndon and I both wanted to be president, he said. The difference was I wasn't willing to kill for it. He knows exactly who killed John Kennedy.
Wow, and that's directly, you're well known to be very good friends with the late Richard Nixon. Nixon wasn't perfect, but you look at the stuff he got in trouble for, having 100 and something names of IRS stuff, not persecuting tens of thousands openly.
Look, he made major mistakes. Taking us off the gold standard, major mistake. The war on drugs, major mistake. But he did believe in American sovereignty. He believed in American
Is that
power.
why there was an internal coup to just weaken the presidency at that time?
Sure, because you see, the war machine, the internationalists thought that in the election of Nixon, we would be able to prolong the Vietnam War in order to make more money.
But he ended it.
They got a dove. This guy was interested in peace and prosperity. He was very cleverly playing the Russians and the Chinese off against each other. That's not what they expected. They expected a dupe. So
he tried to be president, and that's why they got rid of him.
He was a peacemaker. That's why they got rid of him. Now, that's not to say...
That's why they don't want Trump, because he'd actually try to be president.
And he believes in American sovereignty. He's not prepared to...
And that's why we're in so much trouble. Finishing up on the Bushes, you're saying, is the dynasty dead or is it hanging on by its fingernails? Because the archetype of George Herbert Walker, the former CIA director, the guy involved in the Kennedy assassination, out there looking like he didn't know what planet he was on. I have respect for my elders. But at the same time, them rolling him out, was that indicative of the dying Bush dynasty?
The Bush dynasty is far from dead. These people, if they are nothing else, they're relentless. Look at it this way. George H.W. Bush ran for vice president in 1968, 1972, 1974, 1976, and then he finally got there in 1980. Now, Alex, no one runs for vice president. No one. Other than Lyndon Johnson. Why did he run?
Because he wanted to take over.
He had a plan. That's why his right-hand man, Bobby Baker, says on the day John Kennedy is inaugurated, what does he say? John Kennedy will not fill out his term and he will die a violent death.
And the Bushes sat at the knee of LBJ and the CIA on the Opera Run right here in Austin, Texas.
This is precisely why the Bushes maneuvered relentlessly through the 60s and 70s and 80s for the vice presidency.
I mean, I actually know folks, you know, let's just say Johnson family, some of the folks, and it's like well known. Of course he was killed. And I know some of the big Republicans, and I've been on a plane with them before, flying in and out of Dallas. There's like, of course we killed that son of a bitch. I mean, they all brag about it.
Well, as you know, the KGB conducted their own independent investigation. J. Edgar Hoover says to Lyndon Johnson in a memo that was declassified in 1985, well, Mr. President, the Soviets did their own investigation. You know what they concluded? You did it. You did it, Mr. President. The French, they did their own investigation at the request of Jackie Kennedy. You know what they determined? Lyndon Johnson did it. Sure, the Central Intelligence Agency is involved. Sure, the mob was involved. Sure, Big Texas Oil was involved.
That's who you always use.
What's their common thread? Their common thread is Lyndon Baines Johnson.
He was the mastermind.
Absolutely. He was the indispensable.
Well, I mean, I've interviewed before she died, and it was on his mistress.
Yes,
you know, they kept over there at the cattleman's suite over at the Driscoll.
Yes.
Nice place to stay, by the way. And boy, I tell you, I mean, he just walked right out and said, after tomorrow, that son of a bitch will never embarrass me again.
He said it to her twice, actually. He said it the night before and the following morning. He said, after today, those Irish mafia sons of bitches won't be down on me anymore. So there's just no question. Remember, in 1963 in Texas, murder's a state crime. Who controls the Dallas police? Who controls the Dallas district attorney? Who has control of the investigation?
Well, LBJ was just an open gangster. He was Dixie Mafia.
Well, he was on the pad for the mob. He was being paid through a man named Jack Halfer, who he pardoned immediately after becoming president. He was.
And my grandmother knew him.
He was a major water carrier for Big Texas Oil. And as far as the CIA is concerned, as the Senate Majority Leader, he has the authority to appoint himself to a committee. Now, the Majority Leader never serves on a committee of the U.S. Senate. But Johnson appointed himself to the subcommittee of the Defense Appropriations Committee that controlled the CIA budgets. He's the paymaster for the CIA.
I want to go to calls, but I got a question for you later. All these top generals, every special forces person I meet, including officers, they all say there's a counter coup in the government against Obama and the globalist takedown of America. They're all behind Trump. They say he's for real. That's got to scare the power structure that the guys that actually do the hanging are saying they're not going to play ball with going after Trump or anybody. I
think that's exactly true. Look, they're losing their control. That's why they're in a panic. That's why I'm being banned by CNN. That's why I'm being banned by MSNBC. Both laughable because they very rarely interviewed me to begin with.
And their audiences are very small.
And because they know that the truth is dangerous to them. Look, everything you need to know to defeat Hillary Clinton is in my book. The epic rape by Bill, the cover-up by Hillary, the Clintons' abandoned son, their African-American son, who they threw away.
And to know how they work with the Bushes, both books dovetail together. I've read them both. They're unbelievable pieces of history. InfoWarsStore.com to get those, because I'm an expert on all this stuff, and I'd forgotten so much that was in these books and even learned more. It's simply amazing. And I even had family down here in Texas when a lot of this was going on. That was involved in different agencies and things, and they just say this stuff is dead on, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to say, put on these glasses or start chewing concrete.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Time to take a stand, boys.
I'm Alex Jones, and like Rowdy Piper, I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick globalist butt. It's time for all of you, the info warriors, and myself included, to take our fight to the next level and to help the public put the sunglasses on. The metaphor for expanding your awareness, researching what's happening, and admitting that there's a global elite establishing a planetary tyranny. And I was just thinking about it today. It's leap year coming up on Monday. That only happens every 4 years at the end of February. And this is the best time ever to promote liberty and freedom everywhere. We got Super Tuesday coming up next week, and it's important for Americans to be involved in their political process, but not just in their political process, in every action you take with what you talk about and the products you buy and what you promote. You affect change in the world. We don't just vote at the ballot box, we vote with our dollars, we vote with our feet, we vote with our actions. And that's why for leap year, running from this Friday evening right through Monday evening, we're running the biggest sale in the history of 20 plus years of InfoWars and Infowars.com. The leap year special only comes around every 4 years. 30% off all products at InfoWarsStore.com and free shipping on top of the discounts that are already there. This is a major loss leader with some of the products, but overall it will help us fund the InfoWars operation and get our reporters out there across the world covering what's happening. The planet is ready to wake up. People are ready for the truth. But to do that, those of you already awake have to redouble your efforts spreading the word and directing people to good sources of pro-human information like Infowars.com, my syndicated radio show, the Nightly News, and more. I'll be back this Sunday live, 4 to 6 p.m. with the Sunday radio show as well. But in the meantime, take the time out to visit InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com to find the specific nutraceuticals and take advantage of the biggest specials yet on true game-changing products that are simply amazing. Like Survival Shield Nation Iodine X2. Most people are iodine deficient, and most iodine out there is bound to other compounds, so you don't really absorb it. Our research shows this is the purest, strongest, most focused, good halogen ever. And what it does is simply amazing. Read the 5-star reviews at InfoWarsLife.com today and take advantage of the biggest sale ever in InfoWars history. And on top of that, I finally want to thank all of you that have spread the word about the broadcast and that have supported us and our sponsors and bought the products at InfoWarsStore.com. Because without you, none of this would have been possible. My pledge to you is that I will keep the sunglasses on, and this operation will be a sunglass factory in the metaphor or the allegory of They Live, and that we will help humanity take the blinders off, come out of the cave, and defeat this globalist system that's being constructed. Now back to InfoWars Nightly News and more. I'm Alex Jones.
Take a stand, boys. You know what? You got a little courage. Stand up for yourself.
Waging war on corruption. It's Alex Jones coming to you live from the front lines of the InfoWar.
The Oscar winners give a press conference and how to buy a sailboat as...